So we're here with world-renowned speed specialist Michael Drach, the king of speed in Oklahoma. I just made that title up. And Michael is gonna walk us through an entire session as though I'm a brand new client, and I can be very slow at times. Now, Michael's gonna show us a couple things around max velocity. He's gonna show us a few things around acceleration. We're gonna learn all about his system of training, and you guys are gonna have some clear takeaways that you can take from this video and then apply into your own training today. Okay, so Michael, I walk in here, and I want to run, let's just throw out like a 5-second 40 at the age of 40 now.
All right.
What would be the first thing that, in like a short time frame, what's the first thing that we would be hitting?
How I like to do it is you come in, I want to take a look at your mechanics. And so I'll do a quick warm up and we'll get you on the track. I'll film you, and then from there I want to teach them. So I'm going to teach them what I'm looking for, what I want to see. And I usually go to the whiteboard. Let's go to the whiteboard.
Okay. Okay, so we're at the whiteboard. I've got one question.
Yeah.
When you do the warm-up, are you giving them any drills to assist in their mechanics in the first session, or is it more like just get their body temperature up?
Just get them warm up. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to teach them anything. I want to see them run as raw as possible, how they think speed happens.
Which, by the way, you can see in all of your Instagram videos when you have those before and after. So I freaking love that. So kudos on that.
Yeah. So like what I'll teach them first is like, okay, like what moves you? And I'll tell them, I write down force. Most of them have heard that word before, but I'm like, force is what moves you. I want to move forward, I put force backward. I want to move up, I put force down. Yep. So those words right there kind of resonates, it clicks with them. That's step one. Number two, I'll say ground contact time. So I was writing GCT. It's like how long your foot's on the ground. Say we want to put as much force on the ground in the least amount of time. Real simple, they get that. And then I'll say the last one is, I'll just write direction, but it's the direction, I can't spell, direction of that force. And so this is where the mechanics come into play. It's like you can put a lot of force on the ground really quickly, but if the foot's hitting the ground wrong or improperly, it's gonna slow you down. And so from here, I'll say, I'll pull up their video of their pre-run, I'll show them, and honestly, it's like 90% of athletes that come in here at all levels, they're usually, I call it in stuck in fourth gear, kind of bent over posture. And so I'll draw them, so it's kind of like, I'm gonna exaggerate a little bit today, and I'll tell them that their hip level is angled, okay? So if there's their hip level, the knees don't get quite as high, they have early foot reaching out in front of them, and what this causes is a butt kick. So I draw this down for them and I explain, when you are bent over at the hips, so you can do this too, kind of tilts your pelvis down. If you think of your pelvis as a bucket of water, they're dumping the water out the front. Okay. Now tell them right now, okay, now do that and try to lift your knee up. You kind of feel restricted, right? Yeah. Now try to straighten your leg. What do you feel get tight?
Yeah, hamstring.
You feel that hamstring pull, okay? Yeah. And so when we're stuck at max velocity in these mechanics, it makes it really hard to put force in the ground in the right direction. So I'll explain this. So we get this high butt kick. Now this is a little exaggerated for some, but the foot will come up here. Sometimes the heel actually will hit the glute. Right. They're actually kicking their butt, and the foot comes down, and we kind of get this little strike down. And it's usually they're landing on the heel. So that foot is coming down in front of their center of mass. So I'll draw, here's foot contact, here's their center of mass, and then you can kind of go like this. This essentially is your ground contact time, because that foot has to stay on the ground until that hip crosses over the center of mass, and even longer than that. So I'm saying, okay, you might be putting a lot of force in the ground, but it's not moving you in the right direction, because that foot is, it's kind of like braking you. It's almost like it's hitting out in front. Yep. And so what usually happens with athletes like this is, since that foot's acting almost like a brake, they have to now push really hard behind them to keep that speed going.
So they push longer, which even more elongates that.
So if you can kind of get that, so like they're hitting the ground out in front of them, and now it's kind of like they're stuck here, so now they got to really push behind them, and now we're really back here, and it just keeps that cycle going.
Right, okay.
And so this is what we do to fix it.
And this would be essentially more so at like top speed when they're running 20 yards.
Yeah, I think if you're running a 40-yard dash, it's going to be the last 20.
Right, okay.
You know, essentially. So what we do to fix that is, and this is, I always tell my athletes, like, what I'm going to ask you to change today is going to feel extremely awkward. It's like, but just go with it, embrace it. You're learning a new skill. And so I go, we want to get you more upright, okay? We want our hips a little more neutral. So now we're here. Hips are a little more neutral. You can get that knee up. Now everybody's gonna have a little bit different level, but I try to get it, pretty high. So we need space now between the foot and the ground.
What do you think determines the height of the knee?
Depending who you ask.
Okay.
I honestly think it's a conscious effort to lift the knee.
Okay.
Or you can step over the knee. Another thought, we'll go over that in a second. If you step over the knee, but it's that hip flexor muscle, it's lifting it.
Okay.
Some people will say you hit the ground harder, it pops the knee up. I don't think that's possible.
Okay.
And so, and I'll teach them, how to actually.
When can I ask you about whipping from the hip?
Right now.
Okay.
You're right on cue, right on cue. Okay, so when you get that foot off the ground, this is the key for the athletes to learn how to move this hip, the hip flex, and then start moving that femur down and foot down. This is your negative foot speed or negative thigh speed that allows that foot to gain momentum, and it's gonna strike closer to your center of mass. You hit the ground this way, your body's gonna go this way. Okay? Which is what we want. Like if you're gonna think about popping the ground down, because we want a lot of vertical force at max velocity. You don't need a lot of force to keep your momentum. But we're fighting gravity, right? You got gravity pushing you down. You want to move this way, so we got to intersect the two, or essentially we're kind of moving that way every stride. And so this is the key, is we got to get the space between the foot and the ground so that foot can start coming back underneath us.
Okay.
And now our ground contact time is going to be a lot shorter.
Okay.
And so what this looks like is you could have this athlete run a certain time on the flying 10 or hit a certain miles per hour, and you change their mechanics, and they might be a little bit slower in the first day, or they might hit the exact same speed. But what this is doing is this is way more efficient, because they're getting their tendons, their springs involved instead of pushing the ground so hard behind them.
Right.
We want that Achilles tendon to start working to spring you off the ground quickly. Here, that Achilles tendon is not really working very well, and you get the push.
Adaptation could take 2 to 4 weeks or something of them just getting
sometimes longer, depending on the athlete. Yeah, our goal is to change the force profile of that foot contact. This person could be hitting. Now, this is not going to be exact, but here's force, here's time. Okay, the foot hits the ground here, and it might be kind of like this, right? So their foot's on the ground for a long period of time, but they're hitting a decent amount of force. Our goal is to get that force in the ground peak really quickly. So now it can look more like, boom, right away. Yeah. That's what we're trying to go for. Okay. And that might happen instantaneous with some athletes. That might take months and months to build that up. And so, but this is my goal, is let's fix mechanics first, and then let's build off of this. So, now, there's so much that goes into this, plyometrics, all that kind of stuff, learning how to hit the ground harder. But this is essentially what I teach them, step one, and then we go practice it. So
what would be like a drill that we could do?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll do is I'll get you on the wall. So I'll stay tall, okay? So just keep the chest up. So we don't want to go too tall. We don't want the ribs to flare out, okay? So, yep, right there's good. And then I'll say, okay, we want this foot, this heel to step over that knee. And I'll actually grab their foot and do the motion for them. So yeah, bring it back down. So we're gonna go straight up, right here, and back down. I want that ankle flexed, dorsiflex up, and I'll have them do 5-6 reps there, and we'll turn around.
So you actually think get the
heel over that knee. Yep. If you do that, you don't actually have to think too much about lifting the knee.
I see. Yeah, okay.
All you think about is getting the heel over, and it kind of gets.
It's from here.
Yeah.
I can feel it here too.
And the whip from the hips comes from here, so lift it back up again. Okay, so now we're here. This hip is generating the movement, the hip extension, and we're snapping that foot down. Yep. I don't cue that a lot early on, right, because you start to get athletes that will
reach.
Kick out.
Yeah.
They kind of will kick. And so,
but it's more just think here, I don't know if I'm doing this right, but I feel.
Now try it with a little bit of a tilt. Now try it.
Like the wrong way?
Yeah.
I feel like my knee can't. I'm
it's
like trying.
restricted.
Yeah. Here.
And so that's why it's like the first thing I'll do is I'll teach hips and posture. Now, a lot of people ask me, what about my arms? What about my arms? If you would have asked me 15 years ago, 20 years ago when I first started my career, that's the first thing I would have focused on. I would have done rep after rep of arms. I don't even touch them anymore.
Right.
Like unless their arms are all over the place, I'll kind of cue them, hey, relax, you know, run along like a skinny hallway. And that's enough sometimes to kind of get them to think about it.
Right.
But usually, for me, I've noticed if you can kind of just focus on the lower body, the arms kind of like
they'll come in line.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we would go, that's a pretty simple velocity
simple.
drill
Yeah.
that somebody could do just as a warm up, where it's like, hey, get here, get set, and I can tell you right now, I can feel this here, and even, dude, it's actually sort of crazy because I'm standing here and I'm going up. I'm trying to think, walk over my knee, and when I'm bringing it back down, I can actually feel like this. I guess it would be my glute med almost. Go here, like I can feel it. Like I don't know if that's good or bad, but I feel like in through here is clearly working more than it probably has in a while. So it's like cueing that and then having the athlete maybe do something afterwards.
Yeah.
And would that be like you have them do a drill and then you might go do like, I don't know, a skip for a distance or a sprint, or do you do?
I go right into the run.
Okay.
And so I'll have them do this, I'll have them do the step over, and then depending on the athlete, I mean, a lot of them are coming in and they're heel striking.
Right.
And
okay.
I blame the shoes. Like you got this big old fat cushioned heel, so they're just accustomed to hitting their heel, and so I'll tell them like stand on your heels, bounce up and down for me.
Yeah,
Bounce.
exactly.
And they're like, I can't. I'm like, there's no spring. I was like, you land on your heel, I call it a dead foot.
Okay.
There's no spring off the ground, and so you want to hit. Now this is where you can go into a little more detail of how the foot should strike the ground, but we want that Achilles tendon to load and stretch, and so you got to hit the heel off the ground. It's like if we are plantar flexing too soon, that is a weak ankle joint, and the force is not going to transfer.
Okay.
There's not going to be a response off the ground. So we'll go from the board here, apply it to the track,
Okay.
and usually, I mean, a lot of these athletes within 5-10 minutes they look completely different.
Yeah.
And it's not normal for them. They have to like keep repetition of it, and then all of a sudden, week after week after week, all of a sudden, like that's the new way of running.
Right.
And they can't imagine even going back to their old way. They feel different. They feel less fatigued while they're running, more efficient, more springy, and so that's usually the feedback I get on that first run. I was like, did that feel weird? And they're like, yes. I was like, did it feel springy? They're like, yes. It's like, that's what we want.
Right.
So,
Right.
but from there, it gets water, then you go, all right, acceleration time. Let's hit the 1080.
Oh, sick. All right, let's go. So we have a 1080 motion, the 1080 sprint.
It's really hard to me to think of training without it now.
Okay.
It is so integral to what I do.
Right.
And not only is it like helping me as a trainer to see things differently, but my athletes love it.
Right.
Instant feedback on every step, every speed. You'll see in a second how it kind of works. Man, just do some skips and shuffles for now. Just get moving. Tight, huh?
Can I brag about how far I ran this morning? Is this where I can do that?
You don't need to go full speed, but just kind of get a feel. Put that on. This thing goes up to 30 kilograms of resistance. I'm gonna have you just do a run on 10. Basically, you can use it for a lot of things, but it's resistance or assistance. You can do overspeed. Mostly, I use it for resistance, and so I'm gonna have you go just to the orange or green cone, so 15 yards. And you don't need to go full speed, but go ahead. Yep. There you go.
Dude, my quads.
Just from a little run, yeah. So I mean, that wasn't full speed, but you can kind of get an idea. It tracks every single step. So when your foot's on the ground, you speed up. When your foot's off the ground, you slow down. This is kind of what a stride looks like. And see, I don't like this though. This means you slow down. You didn't finish through the line, Dane. But no, the number I look at, I look at three things mostly. My fastest stride.
Yeah, but this is like gamifying everything for me. Oh my goodness.
So your fastest stride happened at 9.82 yards. So right about here, and it's gonna kind of average that stride out and give you a miles per hour. So that's the speed. I want that speed, every rep we do, to go faster and faster and faster. And so then this is your time from start to finish. So we want the time to go down, obviously.
Oh, I thought that was my 40 time.
You wish. That'd be nice. Maybe one day in the past, but and then our average power. So the power from the whole run, and so if your time's faster, obviously the power is going to be higher.
So okay, so maybe let me redeem myself and I'll run the whole way through.
Yeah, you can do another one.
I guess the easy one is Dane, run the whole way through. Like get to the. We're gonna time you to the green one, but I want you to go hard to the orange, maybe.
Yeah.
Is there anything else specifically?
Yeah. So what I'll usually do is I usually don't put them on 10 kilograms right away. I'll put them on 1, which is basically nothing. And I just want to watch them. That's like we did on the track. I want to watch them run and see how they take a first couple steps. And I'll film it, and then we'll go to the whiteboard again. And I'll kind of go through my mindset on acceleration in first step, and then we'll load it up a little bit because it is easier to learn acceleration mechanics when you have something slowing you down.
Yeah.
So you can start thinking, okay, I need to do this.
To keep going, yeah.
And so that's how I'll do it. Want to do another run though?
Yep.
All right. So hold on, let me get you out of your way here. All right, go ahead.
Please be faster.
Definitely a lot faster.
Okay, so this is my negative as an athlete. I've always just gone.
Yeah.
Like as hard as possible.
Yeah.
But I was even trying to think about putting force in the ground more from my hip, and I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
Yeah, we'll go over that in a minute. Absolutely, for sure. And so, yeah, you can see this as a much better run. I also like to look at too is like your first step. I can change the setting a little bit to time. So now the time is on the bottom. You know, you hit almost 4 miles per hour in that first step, and so it's really cool to see like how fast an athlete can hit that first couple steps. Sometimes with an athlete, I'll see a step kind of go really high, and the next one is low, high, low.
And that's where you can see.
Like usually an old injury or sometimes it's a mechanical thing, but a lot of times it's like, okay, talk to me about that leg. What happened? Oh man, I like broke my big toe 2 years ago, and I have no range of motion in the big toe anymore.
Okay.
So like you can see like, okay, that leg's not producing force. Let's try to fix that, you know?
How many runs would you put somebody through on this?
Oh man, so it depends. It depends on like how heavy it is, what they've done in the previous couple days. But my goal is not to fatigue them. My goal is to get fast times. So we'll go 2, 3, sometimes 4-minute rest between each one. And if it's heavy, I'll do maybe 4 to 6.
Okay.
And that might be it.
Would you ever do in one session
An overspeed session and like resisted, or no?
If I had that athlete a couple times in that week, no.
Because you could
if
set
they're
up.
coming in just 1 session a week, you know, even then I'll try not to do that. But sometimes we're like, okay, well, we're gonna do a little bit of overspeed, so really fast max velocity, and then we can do some resisted sprints with that too. I don't think it's ideal, but I have done that, yes.
Okay. Would you compare this? Like another question was this, like, how do you compare this to
running with a sled? Dude, I'm training in my backyard, or
Yeah.
I'm training on a turf field locally. All I can do is get a sled and put a 25-pound plate on it. Like,
Yeah, so a cool thing that I had not mentioned about this yet, and it depends on the level of athlete I get, but you can do a load velocity profile on them.
Okay.
Basically what that is saying is, you know, trying to find your max. Think like we're gonna create a squat program for you. We wanna know what your max is so we can have percentages off of that.
Okay.
Same thing with this thing. It's like, I'll put you through maybe 3 or 4 runs, all at different levels, and it's gonna spit out a number. And it's like, okay, your max is this. And so what we do is we can find exactly, so it's according to research, a good first phase for developing acceleration power is a 50 to 65% drop in your velocity. Okay. So how do you find that? It's like, well, there's ways to find that using a sled. It's like, I don't have those formulas on me, but a lot of trainers, you know, they give you access to how to find that with a sled. So, you know,
you can use your iPhone and video.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, but that 50 to 65% drop in velocity is a lot of weight. That's one thing that this thing really opened my eyes to, is like, they're pulling a lot of weight. It's slowing them down a lot, but it's just teaching you how to put force in the ground horizontally. And so
like it can be like 50+% of their body weight in some cases.
yeah, it's heavy. Yeah. Like the athletes that do it for the first time, they're like, oh my, like I feel like it wasn't moving.
It felt heavier than a sled almost.
Yeah,
I think because the sled.
it's constant. The sled's gonna get a little bit of a pullback. Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
And so, You know, the Run Rocket is a great tool. I use that for years. That's a little more consistent. The 1080 it's in its own class. It's phenomenal.
So we learned all the foundational keys around acceleration, max velocity, and you guys even have some
Simple drills that you need to start working on.
hit those consistently over the
Next
next.
3 to 6 months.
Michael, where can people find you?
Instagram, YouTube, at Drach Performance, DRACH. Love to have you guys give me a follow.
What about your website?
DrachPerformance.com.
Because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.